One Up Media.
In the autumn of 1942, journalist Rajkumar Keswani penned a series of prophetic articles. These weren't just ordinary stories, they were dire warnings about an impending catastrophe looming over Bhopal. Keswani's focus? A Union Carbide plant, which, in his view, was compromising safety by cutting corners. His words painted a grim picture of negligence that could spell disaster for the city. Yet his alarms fell on deaf ears. Friends and readers dismissed his articles as exaggerations, more sensational than substantive. Even Keswani himself might have doubted his sanity had he not been so convinced of the facts. Born on November 26, 1950, Keswani hadn't always been the harbinger of Bhopal's potential doom. His journalistic journey took a pivotal turn in 1981 when a plant worker, Mohammad Ashraf, approached him with a chilling revelation. Ashraf, an employee at the plant, spoke of grave dangers posed to the public. His account included disturbing details, hidden leaks, negligent cover-ups, and threats to the safety of the plant workers themselves. Initially, Keswani was skeptical. Union Carbide, an American corporate success story, didn't quite fit the profile of a reckless operator. The idea that such a renowned company could be so grossly negligent seemed far-fetched. But the story took a grim turn by the year's end. The same man who had warned Keswani, Mohammad Ashraf, met a tragic fate. In a horrific accident, liquid phosgene spilled onto him. In a panic state, he removed his safety mask, inhaling the toxic vapors. His death was swift and shocking. The incident was a chilling wake-up call for Keswani. His subsequent research uncovered disturbing facts. Phosgene wasn't just toxic, it was lethally efficient, historically used in the gas chambers of World War II. Yet even phosgene paled in comparison to something far more deadly: methyl isocyanate, or MIC, and the Union Carbide factory was brimming with it. Keswani's fear escalated. If Ashraf's warning held any truth, Bhopal was a ticking time bomb, akin to an imminent gas chamber explosion. Fueled by this realization, Keswani embarked on a mission to alert the city. His articles grew increasingly fervent in their warnings. Save, please. Save this city. Bhopal sitting on the brink of a volcano. If you don't understand, you all shall be wiped out. In 1985, these prophetic writings would transform Keswani into the youngest recipient to ever win the B.D. Goenka Award, one of the most prestigious in Indian journalism. Yet on the day of his recognition, he might have wished his predictions were wrong. On December 2nd, 1984, the Bhopal Union Carbide plant catastrophe unfolded, becoming the world's worst industrial disaster. Unleashing unprecedented devastation, the catastrophe claimed a toll far surpassing the combined casualties of both the September 11 attacks in the US and the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine.
This morning, authorities now say the toxic gas that escaped from a Union Carbide plant on Monday has killed at least 1,600 people, and they say another 50,000 people may suffer serious aftermath.
From One Up Media, this is Mass Murders. Bhopal, the capital city of Madhya Pradesh, is affectionately known as the City of Lakes. Its picturesque landscape is dotted with numerous natural and artificial lakes, lending it a unique charm. In the 1970s, Bhopal began to emerge as an industrial hub, particularly as India started to open its doors wider to foreign investors. Its strategic location in the heart of India, with prime access to major railway lines, made it an ideal spot for manufacturing and domestic distribution. A relatively less populated area of Bhopal was earmarked for industrial development. This zone caught the eye of a major investor, Union Carbide Corporation. Originating from the era of World War I, Union Carbide had carved out a significant role in diversified industrials. Over time, it transitioned to become one of the early pioneers in consumer-centric approaches, using market research to innovate. It was Union Carbide that developed the Ever-Ready brand, making strides in the battery market. Union Carbide's foray into India began as early as the 1930s, backed by governmental support. Together, they established Union Carbide India Limited, or UCIL, a partnership where Union Carbide held just over 50% ownership, and the Indian government the remainder. UCIL was celebrated as a symbol of successful American investment in India, contributing significantly to the economy. At its peak, the company employed around 9,000 people. It was in the 1970s that Union Carbide ventured into the agricultural sector. This decision would set them on a collision course to Bhopal. During this time, agriculture accounted for about 30 to 40% of India's GDP. The sector engaged an estimated 125 million Indians, and as it expanded, the demand for fertilizers and pesticides surged. UCIL was tasked with building a facility to produce Sevin, a widely used pesticide across Asia. The original site allocated for UCIL's plant was zoned only for light industrial and commercial activities. Consequently, the plant's initial operation was intended to be a relatively straightforward and safe process, formulating pesticides from pre-made component chemicals. However, the late 1970s brought intensifying competition, placing pressure on UCIL to enhance its efficiency. Concurrently, India, recently emerging from a financial crisis, was under intense pressure to reduce imports and manage its foreign exchange reserves. Traditionally, UCIL imported the chemicals needed to produce Sevin, but now, the company considered adopting a strategy of backward integration. This approach, common in various industries, involves the company taking control of producing its raw materials. It's akin to a restaurant not only owning the butchery supplying its meat, but potentially the farms where the livestock is raised. A pivotal decision was made. UCIL would start producing its pesticide components in-house, a move aimed at increasing production efficiency and reducing India's reliance on imports. This decision marked a significant shift for the Bhopal plant, which began producing methyl isocyanate, or MIC, a key component in pesticide manufacturing, and one of the deadliest chemicals known to mankind. On August 25, 1975, a pivotal decision was made regarding the Bhopal plant. It gained the license to produce MIC, but this advancement came with a significant legal implication under Bhopal's regulations. Initially situated in an area designated for light industrial operations, the production of MIC reclassified the plant as an obnoxious industry. This categorization mandated relocation to Bhopal's designated industrial zone, some 15 miles away from its existing site. The rationale for this move wasn't just bureaucratic, it was rooted in safety. The proposed new location, considering wind patterns, would ensure that in the event of a toxic leak, any harmful gases would be carried away from densely populated areas. However, in 1975, when the order to relocate was issued, the response from UCIL was silence. Around the same time, the Director of Town and Planning, the very individual who had proposed this relocation, left his position for another job. In the concerning turn of events, UCIL's plant remained right where it shouldn't have been. Rather than moving, it began the very operation that necessitated the relocation in the first place: the manufacturing of MIC. During this period, India was witnessing a population explosion. From the 1950s through the 1980s, the country's population nearly doubled, bringing with it the inherent challenges of rapid expansion. Among these, housing was a critical issue. The construction industry, struggling to keep pace, gave rise to a new form of dwelling. Locally known as patas, these makeshift shanty houses were similar to hunter-gatherer era huts, cobbled together from cardboard, tin, and plastic. Contrary to what one might assume, not all these slums were illegal. In fact, some were legally recognized housing communities managed by landlords. The widespread presence of such dwellings, even today, is a reflection of India's pervasive poverty. Often, the government, faced with the grim alternative of leaving families homeless, would turn a blind eye to these illegal settlements. Bhopal was no exception. With a shortage of contractors, housing began to mushroom around the city's outskirts, gradually extending farther out. On June 5, 1976, in an effort to keep up with the soaring demand for housing, development was permitted near the Bhopal plant. As the living conditions in these areas improved, they began to attract more residents, including illegal shanty homes. Before long, these makeshift dwellings encircled the factory, some even popping up right at the front gate of the plant. Incredibly, around 700 families found themselves living in close proximity to the factory, a site that was actively involved in the hazardous production of MIC. In the dawn of the 1980s, the MIC production facility was a bustling hub within the factory, with 3 massive tanks dedicated to storing methyl isocyanate. The anticipation was high. This venture was expected to yield substantial returns, especially with India's growing demand for agricultural products. But reality took a different turn. Over the past few years, farming yields had been disappointingly low. Farmers grappled with droughts, unpredictable monsoons, and subpar infrastructure. These challenges pushed them towards mounting debts, leaving little room for investments in pesticides. The UCRL plant, once envisioned as a landmark investment, was inching dangerously close to becoming a financial black hole. The initial thought was to dismantle the plant, to either resell it or integrate its parts into other Union Carbide facilities. However, this plan hit a dead end. There were simply no takers. Faced with this predicament, the decision was made to slash costs in hopes of weathering the storm until the demand for pesticides revived or a buyer emerged. What unfolded over the next 4 years, starting in 1980, was a gradual yet significant transformation. It began almost imperceptibly with a slight reduction in staff. This was likely a test to gauge the factory's operational capacity with a leaner team. Slowly but surely, the workforce dwindled, eventually halving in size. The impact of these cuts was most tangible in the MIC unit. The team, once robust, was now pared down to a mere 6 members. Each individual was burdened with twice their previous responsibilities, but it was the maintenance crew that bore the brunt of these reductions. Their team of 6 was reduced to just 2, effectively tripling their workload. The control room, that was once a hub of coordinated activity, became a solitary place. A single operator was now expected to stand watch over a sea of 70 panels, indicators, and controls. To make matters worse, these tools were ill-maintained, not always able to provide an accurate reading. Safety training, once a comprehensive 6-month program, was now a 2-week crash course. The rest were rewritten as slogans or buried in a safety manual written in English, a language that the operators were not familiar with. Their cost savings push was viewed as a success. Famously, a Union Carbide memo boasted of having saved $1.25 million, but it cautioned that future savings would not be so easy. But as the dust settled on these drastic cost-cutting measures, a realization dawned upon one of the higher-ups. Amidst the array of trimmed expenses and downsized operations, there remained one last untapped area for savings: the refrigeration unit for the MIC. The volatile nature of MIC was no secret. Known for its danger to react at higher temperatures, maintaining low temperatures was critical to prevent any hazardous reactions. The refrigeration unit played a pivotal role in this safety measure, keeping the MIC gas relatively inert and stable. With a contemplative pause, the higher-up made his decision to turn off the refrigeration unit and carve out an additional savings of $37 a day. From 1980 to 1984, aggressive cost-cutting measures were implemented, but this period also saw emerging warning signs that couldn't be ignored. In 1981, tragedy struck. A worker had tragically lost his life after being splashed with phosgene. This was a human error, yes, but one that could have been prevented with proper briefing. This was crucial because the worker, unable to read, couldn't consult the safety manual himself. A year later, in 1982, a safety audit conducted by the Union Carbide's American team uncovered 61 hazards in the plant, 30 of which were deemed critical. Alarmingly, 11 of these hazards were directly related to the MIC units, and despite the serious nature of these findings, the audit failed to result in any enforced actions at the plant. Over the next few years, the plant witnessed at least 6 more significant gas leak incidents. Each time, operators would resume as normal shortly after. You might wonder why the plant remained operational amid such glaring safety concerns. Well, the context is key here. Compared to other factories of the time, UCIL was actually seen as more stringent in its safety measures. For perspective, one steel factory recorded 25 fatalities in a single year. In contrast, UCIL, with just one fatal incident to date, was perceived as comparatively safer. However, what the authorities failed to recognize was the vast difference between manufacturing steel and handling MIC. One of them builds structures. The other, if mishandled, has the potential to kill everyone in it. It's 11 p.m. on December 2nd, 1984. In just an hour and a half, the world will witness the most catastrophic industrial disaster in history. On this seemingly ordinary night, a storage tank E610 filled with MIC starts showing pressure levels 5 times higher than normal. This should have set off alarms, prompting immediate investigation. But after years of experiencing defective readings with no real danger, workers dismissed it again. Half an hour later, at 11:30 p.m., workers near the MIC area began to feel a burning sensation in their eyes and throats. It's a familiar discomfort, a minor annoyance they've learned to live with due to frequent minor leaks around the factory. They report the irritation, but the response is sluggish. They've been down this road before, and it's never led to anything serious. Then, at 12:05 a.m., a plant supervisor decides to check the control room readings. Pressure, temperature, everything appears normal. But truthfully, the readings could be just as defective as they've been in the past. It's a possibility that's been overlooked far too often. Just 20 minutes later, something extraordinary happens. The sensors, unresponsive for years, suddenly spike to their maximum readings. The temperature inside the tank has risen to a level that renders the MIC extremely volatile. Checking the pressure gauges, the team discovers a similarly alarming trend. The pressure is recorded at 26 times its normal level. Clearly, something is gravely wrong. Down by the MIC storage tanks, the thick concrete slabs that encase them start to crack under the strain. Tremors ripple through the area, the intense vibrations causing fissures to spread across the walls. As the temperature around the tanks climbs, the danger becomes unmistakable. The MIC gas has turned volatile. A loud hissing noise erupts, a sign that the gas is forcing its way through the plant's pipes. Now it's 12:30 a.m. The plant team springs into action, activating the facility's multi-layered safety protocols. In a factory dealing with hazardous gases, these safety systems are designed to compensate for one another should one fail. The first line of defense, the refrigeration system meant to keep the MIC cool, has already been compromised. However, there's still hope in the vent gas scrubbers, massive vents filled with caustic soda, designed to neutralize the toxic gas. But the control panels show no activity. The MIC gas has bypassed the scrubbers, continuing its ascent unaffected. The final safeguard is the flare tower, intended to burn off any escaping gas and render it harmless. Yet inexplicably, it fails to activate.
Warning, 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 warning.
The pressurized MIC surges through the pipelines, eventually spewing into the night sky. As the gas escapes, the plant supervisor realizes the magnitude of the disaster unfolding. Even a mere 0.01% concentration of MIC in the air can be lethal. But tonight, a staggering 40 tons of MIC is being unleashed upon Bhopal City. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one. It was 1 a.m. on the 3rd of December, 1984. The night was unusually restless, pulsing with a growing sense of urgency. In Bhopal, Police Chief Swaraj was startled awake by a phone call that shattered the stillness of the night. On the other end, a town inspector's voice was laden with panic.
Chief, it's chaos out here. Everyone's running.
Swaraj, still groggy, responded. Slow down. What's happening?
You don't understand, Chief. It's complete madness.
The inspector described a nightmarish scene unfolding in the Chola neighborhood, just 2 kilometers from the Union Carbide India Limited UCIL plant. An invisible choking gas was seeping into homes, sending residents fleeing in terror. Soon enough, the tidal wave of fear and confusion reached Swaraj's doorstep. Stepping outside, he witnessed a horrifying spectacle. People running frantically, a mother inadvertently dropping her baby in the chaos. Swaraj rushed to pick up the infant, only to discover the child had been tragically trampled in the panic. The mother was nowhere in sight. This heartbreaking moment made clear the gravity of the situation for Swaraj. Immediate action was necessary. Seeking answers, he contacted the UCIL plant. Between 1:25 and 2:10 a.m., he repeatedly called, but the responses were unsettling. Twice they assured him, "Everything is okay," a reassurance that felt increasingly hollow and infuriating to Swaraj. Clearly, everything was far from okay. People were dying on the streets. In a desperate bid for clarity, he called the plant one more time, pleading for any information about what was causing the pandemonium. After a tense pause, a voice on the other end admitted,
Sir, we don't know what has happened, sir.
From One Up Media, this is Mass Murders.
enormity of the tragedy of Bhopal, India is becoming more apparent this morning.
The scenes are simply hellish. So much suffering from India's invisible killer.
Authorities now say the toxic gas that escaped from a Union Carbide plant on Monday has killed at least 1,600 people, and they say another 50,000 people may suffer serious after effects such as blindness and sterility.
At one point, an official said one death was being recorded.
MIC, or methyl isocyanate, is a compound of extreme lethality. It's so toxic that even a minuscule concentration of 0.01% in the air can be fatal. The initial symptoms of MIC exposure are deceptively mild, starting with irritation to the eyes, respiratory system, and skin. But as the exposure intensifies, the effects become far more severe. The body, in a desperate attempt to combat the chemical, floods affected areas with fluid, causing swelling, known medically as edema. When this occurs in the lungs, it leads to respiratory edema, effectively destroying the lung walls and resulting in pneumonia. In other words, MIC exposure is a nightmarish way to die, essentially drowning victims in their own bodily fluids. The full mechanism of how MIC ravages the body remains a mystery to scientists. This lack of understanding means there is no known cure for MIC exposure, placing it among the most deadly chemicals known to humanity. At around 12:30 a.m., as the 40 tons of MIC began its deadly descent, a southeasterly wind caught and carried the toxic cloud over Bhopal's residential slum colonies. The concentration of MIC was so high that an estimated 3,800 people succumbed almost instantly. As the wind continued its course, it swept through Bhopal, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Buffaloes, cows, dogs, and birds fell victim to the gas. Eventually, the cloud reached the heart of Bhopal, a city teeming with 1 million inhabitants. The survivor accounts from that fateful night in Bhopal are nothing short of harrowing. Around 12:30 a.m., it was the cries of children that first signaled something amiss. Awakened by their own coughing and cries of discomfort, these young ones inadvertently alerted their families to the looming catastrophe. Initially, some mothers thought the irritation might be due to chili smoke from late-night cooking. They comforted their children, urging them back to sleep. But soon, a chilling realization dawned on everyone as a thin, white veil of gas descended over Bhopal. By then, it was tragically too late. Those who experienced it recall the sensation as agonizing. Breathing felt akin to inhaling fire. Their eyes burned as if smeared with chili. Confusion reigned. Why were their eyes tearing, noses running, and mouths frothing? The horror of the situation was unfathomable. In desperation, people did the only thing they could. They fled. They ran, placing their hopes to outpace the deadly fog enveloping their city. Amidst this chaos, eyewitnesses recounted seeing others overcome by the gas, vomiting, gagging, convulsing, even as they tried to escape. Many collapsed, suffocating, their lungs overwhelmed by the toxic cloud. The tragedy was particularly acute for the children. MIC is about 40% heavier than air. This means its concentration was deadliest closer to the ground. Heartbreakingly, many perished even as they were being pulled to safety by their families. As the night turned to chaos, the fleeing crowds diverged. Some headed towards the railways, desperate for any means of escape, while others rushed straight to the city's Hamidiya hospital. It's now a little past 2 a.m., and Hamidiya Hospital was in a state of chaos. Its corridors flooded with victims suffering from an unknown affliction. Their symptoms, teary eyes, relentless vomiting, and labored breathing, puzzled the medical staff. The puzzle started to form a picture when a call came through from the authorities. They suspected chemical exposure, the exact substance unknown, but likely an irritant. Gaseous irritants typically cause burning sensations in the eyes, nose, and throat. It seemed a plausible explanation. The initial medical advice was straightforward: use milk, eggs, water, and eye drops for treatment. However, as the night deepened, it became evident that these remedies were futile. The victim's conditions worsened, not a single one showing signs of recovery. In a desperate bid for answers, the state's director of public health, Nagu, reached out to a family doctor. Hi, I need your insight on the irritant you mentioned. People are getting worse, and eye drops aren't doing anything.
Sorry, but it's not so toxic to create a problem.
What are you talking about? People are coming and dying. The dire situation was escalating by the minute. The hospital began to resemble a war zone, with the influx of patients turning into casualties, the numbers escalating into the thousands. Finally, at 3:30 a.m., Police Chief Swaraj received the critical information. The chemical that was causing this catastrophe was methyl isocyanate, MIC. He immediately relayed this crucial update to the hospitals. The delay in identifying the chemical compound proved to be a crucial misstep. While there was no known cure for the effects of MIC, there were simple yet effective measures to minimize its impact. If only they had been communicated in time. A basic action plan could have made a significant difference. Something as simple as covering one's face with a wet cloth, staying indoors, and barricading doors with wet towels could have dramatically reduced the exposure to MIC. Tragically, this vital information remained unknown to both the administration and the residents of Bhopal. In a state of panic, the people unknowingly did the opposite of what could have saved them, leading to widespread and devastating exposure to the toxic MIC. As dawn broke, the harrowing aftermath of the MIC disaster gradually unfolded before the eyes of Bhopal. Streets that were once bustling with life now lay eerily silent, lined with the lifeless and those struggling for life. The hospital, overwhelmed by the scale of the catastrophe, ran out of room. The backyard became a makeshift morgue, filled with rows of bodies. The tragedy extended beyond humans. Cows and other animals, victims of the lethal gas, lay motionless, unsettlingly frozen in their final pose. In the wake of this devastation, as Bhopal braced itself for the daunting task of recovery, a critical question loomed. How had 40 tons of MIC been released into the air? It was perplexing. The factory, specifically designed to handle such hazardous substances, was presumed to have multiple layers of safety measures. What could have led to such a catastrophic breakdown? How could every safeguard have failed simultaneously? The investigation into the MIC gas leak unfolded rapidly, unearthing critical details. Focusing first on the compromised MIC tank, labeled E610, investigators encountered a telling sign: a powdery residue within the tank tinged with iron, a substance that probably came from the internal piping. When this scenario was recreated in a laboratory, a startling discovery emerged. MIC, when mixed with water and traces of rust, triggered a reaction identical to the one factory workers had witnessed that fateful night. It seemed that water had somehow seeped into the MIC tank, picking up rust along its path. This combination sparked what chemists refer to as a runaway reaction. Essentially, it's a reaction that gains unstoppable momentum, escalating rapidly and placing immense strain on tank E610. Under such intense pressure, the tank's emergency pressure release valve couldn't hold. It shattered, sending the deadly gas spewing out through the emergency venting system. This sheds light on how the catastrophic gas was formed, but another crucial question loomed: how did the MIC manage to escape in the first place? In any factory dealing with toxic chemicals, layers upon layers of safety measures are standard. For such a gas leak to occur, It meant that multiple safety systems had to fail simultaneously. In the aftermath of the Bhopal disaster, investigators meticulously combed through factory schematics and conducted interviews, piecing together a chilling narrative of systemic failure. One key safety feature in the plant's design was the slip line, a metal plate engineered to create a watertight barrier between pipe sections during maintenance. Shockingly, on that fateful night, this essential component was missing, leaving an open gate for water to pour into the MIC tank. But there were more layers of protection, or at least there should have been. The MIC tanks were designed to be pressurized with inert nitrogen gas, forming a protective shield. However, as workers revealed, this system had been malfunctioning for weeks, a severe issue that had somehow slipped under the radar. The faulty valve, meant to retain the nitrogen gas, now could provide another pathway for water to infiltrate the MIC tank. As the investigation progressed, the extent of negligence continued. The plant's vent gas scrubber, a crucial defense mechanism against gas leaks, was found to be non-functional. Workers confirmed they had seen no sign of its operation. Furthermore, the flare tower, meant to incinerate any escaping MIC gas, was also inoperative. A vital section of its corroded pipe had been removed and not replaced. The final safeguard at the plant, a water spray system, intended as the last line of defense against escaping gas, tragically fell short. Investigators revealed that the water sprayers were too small and ineffectively positioned, unable to neutralize the escaping gas. The sheer coincidence of all 5 safety layers, the seal, nitrogen gas, scrubbers, flare tower, and water spray being carelessly ill-maintained seemed to suggest a larger root cause. It was clear to those on the ground, under mounting pressure to cut costs, UCIL had compromised on critical training and investment in safety measures. Yet, as the investigation neared its conclusion, one pivotal question transformed the Bhopal disaster into a focal point of intense debate. Investigators agreed that a runway chemical reaction had produced the lethal gas. However, calculations indicated that initiating such a reaction would require around half a ton of water, a volume seemingly improbable unless introduced deliberately. So, the pressing question arose: who introduced the water into the system?
The Union Carbide insecticide plant has been closed, of course, now. Outside, vultures devour the carcasses of animals killed by the fumes. Doctors are working around the clock at hospitals that are filled to overflowing.
Union Carbide acknowledged today that 2 years ago the company had major concerns about the safety conditions for methyl isocyanate at its plant in Bhopal, India.
3 months before the deadly leak in Bhopal, India, a report by one of the company's own safety teams there warned a runaway reaction could occur and cause a catastrophic failure.
India's investigative team reported that at around 9:30 p.m., workers were conducting a routine flushing operation. Midway, they ran into an unexpected issue. The water wasn't flowing out as it normally would. In an effort to resolve this, they may have pumped more water than they should, which seemed to fix the flow problem. However, unknown to them, this led to a backlog of water accumulating silently, eventually finding its way directly towards the MIC storage unit. This theory, widely accepted at the time, was both credible and easy to grasp. Yet it had a significant shortcoming. It couldn't be replicated in practical experiments. This left a gaping hole in the narrative, brimming with doubts and unanswered questions. Up to this point, the Indian government had maintained a tight grip on the investigation, a common practice in managing large-scale disasters. The idea is to limit interference, especially from parties with potential biases or agendas. Introducing Union Carbide Corporation, or UCC, into the mix was risky. They were understandably eager to clear their name, but their involvement could potentially skew the investigation. However, when UCC was eventually granted access, they unveiled a different perspective. According to their findings, plant logs had been tampered with, some altered, some destroyed. Separate interviews with employees yielded inconsistent accounts. This led UCC to propose a new theory: sabotage by a disgruntled employee who inadvertently escalated the situation beyond control. Ultimately, the Indian Legal Council did not pursue the sabotage theory. Instead, the Indian government passed the Bhopal Gas Leak Act in March 1985. This legislation allowed the Government of India to act as the legal representative for the victims, initiating proceedings against Union Carbide. The ensuing legal battle saw claims skyrocketing to $33 billion. But in a dramatic turn of events, a settlement was reached in February 1989. Union Carbide agreed to an out-of-court settlement of $470 million, a figure that was significantly lower than the initial claims. For those well-versed in the medical costs of Bhopal, this figure might seem sufficient at first glance, theoretically covering up to 5 years of medical expenses. However, as time passed, our understanding of the long-term effects of MIC exposure sadly tells a different story. Within the first 6 months, it became evident that symptoms like constant tearing and breathing difficulties weren't fleeting. Those who suffered more severe consequences, like blindness, faced a lifetime of impairment. Some would tragically succumb to their ailments. As years unfolded, a more disturbing picture emerged. People began experiencing a gradual breakdown of their central nervous systems, affecting speech, learning, and motor functions. Even those who initially seemed to escape the worst health impacts weren't spared entirely. By the early 2000s, it was revealed that their children had a 7-fold increased risk of birth anomalies. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic. For the survivors of the gas tragedy, their vulnerability was apparent. They experienced a death rate 6.5 times higher than those who had not been exposed to the gas. And yet our understanding continues to evolve. New issues and health challenges are still emerging among the new generation of survivors, a poignant reminder of the disaster's lasting impact. On that fateful night of 2nd December 1984, as the gas enveloped the city, the scale of the disaster was beyond comprehension. Many victims couldn't be identified, as entire families, neighbors, and communities who might have recognized them were gone. The scale of exposure was staggering, culminating in what we call mass murder. It's estimated that 500,000 people were subjected to varying degrees of exposure to MIC. In the years to follow, around 150,000 individuals would continue to grapple with the lingering effects of this exposure. Tragically, at least 25,000 lives would be lost as a direct consequence of this catastrophe. In just one harrowing night, countless lives were extinguished, leaving behind a void where once there were vibrant communities. There was no one left to recall their names, their stories, their dreams. Entire existences wiped away, with only the echoes of their memory remaining. Mass Murders is a One-Up Media original. A quick word on our reenactments and dramatizations. While we can't know exactly what they say, think, or feel at the moment, it is all based on research. This episode was executive produced by Guang Jin, produced and written by Ethan Sam, edited by Alex, narrated by Jason, audio experience by Ethan Sam, with additional engineering by Ashley from One-Up Media. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.